Sergeant John Riley gripped his rifle, the cold steel a familiar comfort against his clammy skin. His mission slipped through 15 clicks of enemy territory, relay vital intel, and get out. Simple. Except, war rarely offered such simple equations. The setting sun cast long, eerie shadows across the ravaged landscape. This was his first solo mission, the weight of responsibility heavier than his pack. Riley moved like a phantom, senses on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig sent jolts of adrenaline through him. He relied on instinct, honed from years of combat, to guide his every step. The soldier knew he was walking a razor's edge. One wrong move could spell disaster. The forest canopy swallowed the moonlight, plunging the world into oppressive darkness. Riley felt a shiver, not from the cold but from the invisible eyes he felt upon him. He pressed on, his pace steady, his resolve unwavering. The enemy was everywhere, and nowhere. He clung to the thought of his comrades, their faces etched in his memory, fueling his determination. The forest floor was littered with the debris of war-spent bullet casings, shattered helmets, a child's doll lying abandoned, each object a stark reminder of the conflict's toll. Riley forced the images from his mind. He had to stay focused, stay alive. His mission, his survival, depended on it. A twig snapped, echoing through the silent forest like a gunshot. The sound was sharp, sudden, and unmistakable, breaking the stillness of the night. Riley froze, his breath catching in his throat. He was too late. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder of the danger he was in. He had been careful, or so he thought, but now it was clear that his caution had not been enough. 3 figures emerged from the darkness, their rifles trained on him. They moved with a predatory grace, their eyes cold and unyielding. Riley could see the glint of their weapons in the moonlight, a stark reminder of the lethal threat they posed. The forest, once a place of refuge, now felt like a trap closing in around him.
"Don't move." The command was barked out, sharp and authoritative, leaving no room for disobedience. The voice was filled with a mix of anger and control, a dangerous combination.
A voice hissed in a language he didn't understand but whose intent was universally clear. The tone, the urgency, the menace, it all translated perfectly. Riley didn't need to know the words to grasp the threat they carried. Riley's mind raced, calculating his options. Surrender wasn't an option. He knew what awaited him if he gave up. Interrogation, torture, perhaps even death. He had to think fast, to find a way out of this dire situation. His training kicked in, instincts honed by years of experience guiding his thoughts. He had to fight his way out, there was no other choice. The odds were against him, but Riley had faced worse before. He steeled himself, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. His muscles tensed, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. He feigned surrender, slowly raising his hands. It was a calculated move, designed to buy him a few precious seconds. His eyes darted around, taking in every detail, every possible advantage. He needed to create an opening, a moment of distraction. But his fingers inched towards the grenade strapped to his chest. It was a risky gamble, but one he was willing to take. The cold metal of the grenade was a reassuring presence, a reminder that he still had a chance. One of the enemy soldiers, sensing a ruse, took a step forward. His eyes narrowed, suspicion etched on his face. He was close enough now that Riley could see the determination in his eyes, the readiness to act at the slightest provocation. Riley seized the moment, pulling the pin and hurling the grenade at the feet of his captors. It was a fluid motion, practiced and precise. The grenade sailed through the air, a small, deadly package of hope and destruction. The explosion ripped through the night, a blinding flash followed by a deafening roar. The force of the blast knocked Riley off his feet, the shockwave reverberating through his body. The night was momentarily turned to day, the darkness shattered by the brilliant, deadly light. As the echoes of the explosion faded, Riley knew he had only moments to capitalize on the chaos he had created. Section 4. Price of Survival. Riley sprinted through the chaos, the ringing in his ears deafening. The battlefield was a cacophony of explosions and gunfire. Each step he took felt like a step closer to the edge of sanity. The ground beneath him shook with the force of nearby blasts, and the air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning. He didn't look back. He couldn't allow himself to process the carnage he left behind. The screams of the wounded and dying were a constant reminder of the brutality of war, but he forced himself to focus on the path ahead. Every fiber of his being was dedicated to survival, to completing the mission that had been drilled into him. He had survived, but at what cost? The faces of the enemy soldiers, young and filled with fear, haunted him. They were not just faceless adversaries, they were individuals with their own stories, their own dreams and fears. The memory of their eyes, wide with terror, would stay with him forever. Were they fighting for an ideal, just like him? The thought gnawed at him. He had been taught to see the enemy as the other, as a threat to be neutralized. But in the quiet moments, he couldn't help but wonder if they were so different after all. Were they not also fighting for their homes, their families, their beliefs? The soldier leaned against a tree, catching his breath, his expression one of exhaustion and dawning horror. The adrenaline that had kept him moving was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. His body ached and his mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The reality of what he had done, of the lives he had taken, was beginning to sink in. He pushed the thoughts away. He couldn't afford doubt, not now. Doubt was a luxury he couldn't afford in the middle of a war zone. He had to stay focused, had to keep moving. There would be time for reflection later, if he survived. For now, he had to stay sharp, had to stay alive. He had a mission to complete. His hand trembled as he reached for his canteen. The simple act of drinking water felt like a lifeline, a moment of normalcy in the midst of chaos. The cool liquid soothed his parched throat, but it did little to calm the turmoil inside him. He had crossed a line tonight, taken lives. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, a heavy burden that he knew he would carry for the rest of his life. Each life he had taken was a mark on his soul, a reminder of the cost of survival. The burden of it settled heavy on his soul, a weight he would carry long after the battle was over. The guilt was a constant companion, a shadow that followed him even in his dreams. He knew that he would never be the same, that the war had changed him in ways he couldn't yet fully understand. But for now, he had to keep moving, had to keep fighting. The price of survival was high, but it was a price he was willing to pay. Section 5. Desperate Stand. The enemy headquarters loomed before him, a menacing silhouette against the dawning sky. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes every breath feel like a laborious task. Riley stood there, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The dawn's light cast long shadows, making the enemy base look even more formidable. Riley knew he was walking into a hornet's nest, but he had come too far to turn back. Each step he took was measured, cautious as he navigated the treacherous terrain. The ground was uneven, littered with debris from previous skirmishes. He could feel the weight of his mission pressing down on him, but he pushed forward, driven by a sense of duty and determination. He sent the coded message, his heart pounding against his ribs. The radio crackled as he transmitted the vital information back to his unit. Every second felt like an eternity as he waited for confirmation. His intense expression betrayed the inner turmoil he felt, knowing that any mistake could cost him his life. His mission was complete. Now he had to get out alive. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had done what he came to do, but the hardest part was yet to come. He steeled himself, preparing for the inevitable confrontation that awaited him. His determination was unwavering, his resolve unbreakable. Gunfire erupted. Riley hit the dirt, the air filled with the whine of bullets. The ground around him exploded with the impact of enemy fire. He could feel the vibrations through his body as he pressed himself against the earth, seeking any cover he could find. The cacophony of battle was deafening, but he remained focused, his training kicking in. They had been waiting for him. He returned fire, his movements precise, deadly. Each shot was calculated, aimed to neutralize the threat. His weapon felt like an extension of his body, every squeeze of the trigger a testament to his skill and training. The enemy was relentless, but so was he. Each shot was a prayer, a desperate plea for survival. In those moments, time seemed to slow down. He could see the trajectory of each bullet, feel the recoil of his weapon. His intense expression reflected the gravity of the situation. He was fighting not just for his life, but for the lives of his comrades who depended on him. The enemy was closing in, their numbers overwhelming. He could see them advancing, a seemingly endless wave of soldiers. The odds were stacked against him, but he refused to give in to despair. He knew that every second he held them off was a second gain for his unit to regroup and prepare. Riley knew he couldn't win this fight. He could only hope to buy enough time. His mind raced with strategies, each one more desperate than the last. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. This was his desperate stand, a final act of defiance against overwhelming odds. He was ready to give everything he had to fight until his last breath for the chance to see another dawn. Section 6. Against the odds, the whirring of helicopter blades sliced through the air. Reinforcements. Riley allowed himself a sliver of hope. He emptied his magazine, providing cover fire as his comrades descended from the sky, a welcome wave of fury. The tide of the battle turned. The enemy, caught off guard, began to fall back. Riley sagged against a wall, his body riddled with exhaustion and pain. He had made it. He looked up at the sky, the roar of the helicopters fading into the distance. The faces of the men he'd fought alongside, the men he'd killed, swirled in his mind. The cost of war, etched deep in his soul. Section 7. Reunion. The cheers were deafening as Riley limped back to base, his arms slung around the medic's shoulders. He was greeted with backslaps and handshakes, his brothers in arms hailing him a hero. But Riley felt no joy, only a profound weariness. He spotted his best friend Mark, his face etched with worry, now breaking into a relieved grin. Their embrace was tight, unspoken words passing between them. In that moment, surrounded by the camaraderie of his fellow soldiers, Riley felt a flicker of warmth amidst the cold ashes of war. He had survived, but the scars, both visible and invisible, would forever remain.